So first time we start talking about the School of Nursing, great school. I know we have a lot of students here. I'm so proud of you guys. I'm in the master's program, but you can start as a BSN. You become a nurse, a floor nurse, typically what everybody sees when they go into a hospital. Can I put this down? No, I have to talk on it. Okay. Then after you get your BSN, you come back, you get your your master's degree, which gives you the ability to write scripts and makes you a mid-level provider. And then you can come back and do some research and get awarded a PhD. 79% of students are female, 21% are male. And that's a real statistic, apparently. But truthfully, in my experience, I think we're almost half and half. We need more outreach, I suppose. So, my story is a little different. Confucius once said, choose a job you love, and you'll never have to work another day in your life. It's great advice, but it's not always that simple. Some of us, we follow a more meandering path. I can't always say I always wanted to be a nurse. I knew I wanted to help people, I wanted respect, I wanted financial security, and nursing just seemed like maybe a good stepping stone. But even when I applied to nursing school, like my inspiration was a lot more tepid than I'd like to believe. And when I looked around at my classmates and my teachers, I was wondering like, why can't I have the same passion that these people have? And then it happened, my epiphany. I was in my third semester on a pediatric rotation in New York, and I was tasked to look after this really cute little boy who's so boring clinically. I mean, all he did was just eat and sleep. Like, who knew that's what babies do, right? I didn't. But suddenly, I was kind of ignoring him a little bit, and suddenly I heard this shriek, and like it turned into this guttural roar, like from inside. And I noticed that one of the doors, the room had been left open. There was a little girl in there. She was like 3 years old. She had cystic fibrosis and C. diff. Her parents, she was alone. Her parents were illegal or undocumented immigrants. They had two menial jobs. They had three other kids at home, two of whom had cystic fibrosis. She was all alone. I watched it as these nurses and doctors went in and out of her room, gowning up because, isolation precautions, C. diff, yellow gown. This baby couldn't see their face. I just felt like so much empathy for this child. Like here she was, just small, unable to breathe, helpless, trapped in a bed with just strangers. She couldn't see their faces, just poking her and touching her. And I felt so bad. So I left my boring little baby and I went into the room and I gowned up in her presence so she could see my face. And I picked her up and I held her. It wasn't that easy. There was a lot of kicking and screaming involved. But eventually she put her head down on my shoulder and she went to sleep. She slept for 3 hours. I sat there, deathly afraid to move for 3 hours. But I realized something. Of all the places that I could have been, of all the things that I could have been doing, I would have chosen to be with that little baby for those 3 hours over and over and over again. Nursing had suddenly changed from being just a stepping stone to like my life's purpose. Similarly, coming to UT has become more than a stepping stone for me. This semester, I took a clinical preceptorship at Westover Hills, and a small group of 10 of the most amazing kids in the school. I shouldn't say kids, they're big people, but they're adorable and they're mine. And we spent 7 weeks at Westover Hills, 7 weekends at Westover Hills in the hospital. And I say this from the bottom of my heart. It was the absolute best experience of my life. I kind of liken it to like rose gardening. A rose bush is an unknown. Sometimes it's large and wild looking, sometimes it's really small and weedy. But this rose has been entrusted to your care. And sometimes its needs are obvious. Like if it's yellow, you give it more sun. If it's brittle, you add more water. If it's going too slowly, you add some fertilizer. But more often than not, you need to finesse it. Every rose needs different things at different times in different quantities. And then there's a scary part, which is pruning. How do you prune a rose in a way that maintains its vigor, but also prepares it for the bloom that it's going to have to bear? My students were just like beautiful rose bushes. Some were already budding, some needed a little pruning, but all of them needed nourishment and a chance to bask in the sun. As their gardener, I did my best to give them not what I thought they needed, but what they needed. The most amazing part is that they blossom. Boy, did they blossom. I felt like the best rose gardener that ever lived. But I blossomed too. Like, as I nourished them and I pruned them, I was also nourishing myself and I was pruning myself. I grew more than I've ever grown in my life. Spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, not vertically. They're not magicians like that, right? But I'm a different person today than I was at the beginning of the term. I realized for the first time in my life, I was totally invested in the success of another person with no hope or promise for something in return. It's like tending a garden from which you'll never harvest, but you still love it. I graduated in 2020, and I intend to take everything I learned here, including my newfound selflessness, to the US Air Force. I've received so much from this country. It's like the only way I know to pay it back. Um, I'm grateful to the School of Nursing because they've given me this experience that I don't think I would have ever had anywhere else. They've instilled in me, I'm going to give them all the credit, but they've instilled in me like this facet of humility, this facet of self sacrifice that I never knew I had. Um, I'll also be forever grateful to my first class. They're my favorites. I used to tell them this and they used to say, yeah, but we're your only class. But they're still my favorites. And some of them are sitting here. I'd like you guys to stand up. Well, two of them at least. The other three escaped because they had to go somewhere. So stand up, Sophia. She's very adorable, as you can see. And then there's Michael. Stand up, Michael. Extra adorable. Um, and to my teachers here. Are there any teachers in here? I know that that's a teacher over there. Sort of. um, I really understand now. Thank you so much for everything that you do. All right, that's me. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening.